Hi, I'm Jez. I'm a librarian, public speaker, and job coach. I've presented at over 75 libraries, universities, and community centers throughout the Midwest on a variety of topics, including astrology, hands-on crafts, and job hunting. Today, I'm going to talk to you about things you can do around the city of Chicago without breaking your budget. My goal here is that you should be able to get 2 people in under $30. There are a couple things that go beyond that, but you'll still always get at least one person under $30. I try not to go too high above that because there are so many options we have and they're not always very affordable in the city. So I want to include the things that I think will be best for everyone's budget. Now, I do update this every couple of weeks, but things can change very quickly. So if you plan on visiting any of these attractions, make sure you check their website or call ahead before you go to make sure that you know they are open and if anything has changed. Let's start with the Museum of Contemporary Art in Streeterville. This is one of the world's largest contemporary art venues and was started in 1967 as a non-collecting art gallery, but in 1974 they began collecting and preserving art and now have over 2,000 works in a permanent collection featuring about 1,500 different artists. Some of the artists you might recognize are Jasper Johns, Andy Warhol, Cindy Sherman, Kara Walker, and Alexander Calder. The museum contains historical samples from the 1940s to 1970s in late surrealism, pop art, minimalism, and conceptual art. They also have a large collection of 1980s postmodernism art, as well as contemporary paintings, sculptures, photography, video, and related media. Additionally, they have live performances, including dance, theater, and music. The museum is free for Illinois residents every Tuesday and always free for children under 18. They do have family activities on the second Saturday of each month, which are also free. Next is the Museum of Contemporary Photography in the downtown loop. It is always free, but reservations are strongly encouraged. The museum is actually closed at the moment while they switch out their last exhibit for the new one, and the museum will reopen on July 8th with its new exhibit, Beyond the Frame. Beyond the Frame spotlights photography as a resource for visual literacy skills, and rather than grouping things together by time period or photographer, what they've decided to do is reorganize each gallery by theme, bringing together historical and contemporary photographs, as well as photographers from local and international artists to encourage thoughtful interaction with images and how we perceive them. They do offer some performances and lectures both in person and online, although some of those may cost a small fee, so check ahead. Next up is the Smart Museum of Art in Hyde Park, which is always free. It reopens to the public on September 22nd. It is currently closed. It will be open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Thursday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. It is closed for renovations because they are expanding the museum, and there's going to be a lot more space, including a new classroom and performance space. So looking forward to what they're going to do there. Their next exhibit will open on September 22nd and is called Monochrome Multitudes. It features works of monochromatic art and is organized so that each room is dedicated to a different color. The mediums range from paintings and videos to footballs and pantyhose. So there's a little bit of everything here. It includes about 100 works, some of which are on loan from the University of Chicago and some private collections. The museum describes itself as a site for rigorous inquiry and exchange that encourages the examination of complex issues through the lens of art objects and artistic practice. Some of what you see here will be a little bit more abstract than you might be used to seeing in other museums and a little bit more high concept, but is fascinating to look at, and I'm very interested in their new exhibit. And they also have an outdoor sculpture garden, which you should definitely check out. The Clark House Museum is in the Prairie District on the near south side. It is always free. It's Chicago's oldest house, built in 1836, and the house's history fascinates me. It was spared during the Great Chicago Fire in 1871. Fire kind of skipped over it. And it was first moved in 1872 when the Crimes family bought it and moved it 28 blocks south and 1 block west to avoid a repeat of the fire. Why they thought moving it would make a difference, I'm not actually sure, but it was spared once. They were also hoping to get one of their sick children into the pure air of the country, which is very much in the middle of the city now. In 1941, the house was sold to the St. Paul Church of God in Christ, which built a church on the adjoining land and used the house for offices, classrooms, and events. When the church needed the land for other purposes, they began the process of selling the house, considered to be the city's oldest surviving structure, to the city. After 5 years of negotiations, the city bought the house in 1977 and moved it to 1 block south and 1 block east of the original site. The biggest obstacle in this is not just lifting up and moving a house, but the L. The L did not exist when the house was first moved in 1872 and was kind of blocking the way. So the house was lifted up and transported on dollies, and at exactly 1 minute after midnight on December 4th, they stopped all train traffic, and the house was slowly jacked up 27 feet in the air, and they laid rails across the tracks, and cables were used to slowly pull the house to the other side of the tracks. Unfortunately, this was done in Chicago in the middle of winter. So the hydraulic equipment needed to lower the house froze, and the house stayed in the air for another 2 weeks until things thawed out in December 18th. Eventually, it did make it back to its original home in the Prairie District, and now you can go through the museum, which shows life in Chicago before the Civil War. So you can go through and see how things were not only in the past, but how they were in the past in Chicago specifically. You can go through and really see how people lived. They have guided tours that are offered on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 1 p.m., or you're free to give your own tour for free whenever the museum is open. Jane Addams Hull House is on the near west side. They have a suggested donation of $5, and they currently require advance tickets. They're open Tuesday through Friday, 9:10 a.m. to 4:50 p.m. Not quite sure why they have those hours, because previously it was 9 to 5. So they must need a little bit extra time to open and close. This is the Hull House Settlement, which was founded in 1889 by Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr to serve recently arrived European immigrants. There is a long history of Hull House in Chicago, especially with things like social justice, including helping to desegregate the Chicago public schools. The Hull Mansion was one of the first 4 structures to be listed on the Chicago Registered Historic Places and the National Register of Historic Places. And after the Hull House Association moved from their original complex in the 1960s, they continued to provide social services in multiple locations throughout Chicago. They ceased their operations in January of 2012, and the Hull Mansion and related dining hall, which were the only remaining structures of the original complex, are now maintained as a history museum. The museum includes things like textiles that were woven by Hull House residents. They have a labor museum, portraits and drawings of neighbors and settlement life. They have pottery that were produced by artists who used to live there, including period and folkloric clothing and artifacts from the Maxwell Street Market, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They also have oral histories from Hull House residents. It is considered Chicago's first public playground and public art gallery, and is now a memorial to Jane Addams, the first American woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, and her colleagues. The Dusable Museum of African American History is in Washington Park. It is always free on Wednesdays, and the rest of the week it's $10 for adults, $7 for students and seniors, $6 for kids aged 4 to 11, and always free for kids under 4. It is the nation's oldest independent African American museum, currently celebrating its 61st year. So amazing that we have the oldest museum here in Chicago, but a little unfortunate that the oldest one is still only 61 years old. They have over 15,000 paintings, sculptures, printworks, and historical memorabilia, including special exhibits dedicated to Harold Washington and the 1919 Chicago race riot, as well as other monumentous times in African American history, specifically in Chicago. The big draw that you should definitely check out is the March. It does require timed entry bookings because it's limited to 3 people at a time. It's a small space. Right now in Chicago, immersive exhibits are huge. You've probably seen them popping up in different places across the city, usually involving art. This immersive exhibit is aiming to recreate the 1963 March on Washington. So the goal is that you should be able to see and hear and experience what things were like at the march in 1963. The March exhibit is a joint venture from Viola Davis and Time magazine. The museum also gives free admission to military and first responders, which includes police, fire, and EMTs with a valid ID. The Chicago Sports Museum is in Water Tower Place. It's $10 for ages 12 to 64, $8 for college students, $6 for seniors, $6 for kids age 4 to 11, and free for kids under 4. Now the trick is, if you want to make a day of it, go to Harry Carey's 7th Inning Stretch restaurant first, and you'll get free entry with a $10 minimum purchase. So you'll actually save some money by going out for lunch first if you were planning on doing that anyway. There are 30-minute tours available for an additional $5 per person, which can be booked about 2 weeks in advance. This museum is so much fun, especially for kids, but adults can really get into it too. It is full of interactive exhibits and virtual reality games, in addition to memorabilia. The virtual reality games include defending the goal against Patrick Kane, shooting hoops with Scottie Pippen, and an all-star home run contest with Frank Thomas. They have exhibits dedicated to forensic sports, solving some of Chicago's most infamous sports mysteries, as well as how the science of sports have changed over time. Being Chicago, we do need to have an exhibit dedicated to curses and superstition because we have very many of them. It is also the world's largest collection of Chicago Cubs World Series memorabilia. So if you are a Cubs fan, this is a must-see. Be aware that the museum does close frequently for private events, so make sure you check the website before you go. Usually it's only closed for a couple hours at a time. My favorite thing to do in the city is the Chicago Cultural Center in the downtown loop. It is free and open daily 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. They do building tours at 1:15 on Thursdays and Fridays. It was first completed in 1897 as the Chicago's first public library and was later opened as the Cultural Center in 1991 when the library moved its main branch to the Harold Washington location. It has the largest Tiffany stained dome in the world, in addition to quite a few of Tiffany chandeliers. There are always great exhibits here, including Art and Race Matters, the Great Chicago Fire in Focus, an instrument in the shape of a woman, which will be there through September, and Gin Lee Views and Scenes, which will be there until August 7th. The fire exhibit, I think, is particularly interesting. At the time of the fire, they took what is essentially photographs but printed on glass, and those photographs were blown up to full size, life size, and cover the entire hallway so that you can really see in close detail what everything looked like in the city the morning after the fire. It's fascinating to me to see what the fire did and did not burn, and just seeing how people interacted on that day. It kind of really brings you into that moment. If you are into architecture or art, you absolutely have to go to the Cultural Center. The building itself is gorgeous, and make sure you take a look at the floors, which are covered in intricate mosaics, which I think must have taken years to do. And if you look up, you can see in the walls there are carved a lot of literary quotes because, again, it was the library originally. The Cultural Center has lots of accessibility accommodations, including assistive listening devices, induction loop, open captioning. At events, they have sign language interpreters, and they always have touch tours and audio description. The touch tours are for folks with visual impairments, so that even if you cannot see what is in front of you, you can still interact with it. Another library on the list is the Newbury Library in Streeterville. You might recognize the name from the Newbury Awards, which are awarded from this same foundation. The museum is free with limited tickets for events. The main library collection has over 1.5 million books, 5 million manuscripts, and 500,000 historic maps. They have core collections on the history of the book and how that has changed over time, genealogy, indigenous studies, and Chicago history. They have Shakespeare's first folio, letters from Thomas Jefferson, and the original woodblocks used to create the Cooper Black font, back when you needed to put little blocks in the printing press and move them around to create new words. Their current exhibit is dedicated to the Pullman Company maids, which are often overshadowed by the Pullman porters. These were all Black employees that served white travelers in luxury travel and were billed as handmaidens for travelers. The collection includes archival materials such as the instruction manual for the maids, photographs, and one maid's handwritten account of her work with the Pullman Company. The galleries are open Tuesday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is an actual library, in addition, and especially a research library. If you are interested in genealogy and your family lived in Chicago and maybe you've hit a wall, the Newbury Library is absolutely the place to go. The librarians there can help you with your genealogy research and have access to all kinds of materials you can't get anywhere else. So if you're interested, talk to your local librarian about how to visit the research library. On the topic of the Pullman maids is Historic Pullman District and the Pullman National Monument. This is in the neighborhood called Pullman. It's an actual neighborhood, so it is open to the public and always free because these are people's actual houses. The visitor center is open 9 to 5 every day. And this district was the nation's first planned model industrial community, and it was built to house the workers and families of the workers involved with the Pullman cars, that luxury travel. There are currently no tours scheduled, but the park rangers can help you create an itinerary to match your interests. It is part of the National Park Service, and they have self-guided tours with a free brochure from the Visitor Center. The Visitor Center has exhibits on labor rights, urban planning, immigration, civil rights, and more. It's essentially a mini museum. The National Park Service does recommend a half-day visit, But if you don't have that much time, they suggest that you start at the clock tower. Graceland Cemetery might be familiar to some of you. It is in Lakeview. It is free and open 365 days a year. It is an actual cemetery, which some of you may find strange to have on this list. It has tons of Chicago history in it. It dates back to 1860, so a lot of the big names in Chicago history are buried in this cemetery. That includes Potter Palmer, Daniel Burnham, Marshall Field, George Pullman, Alan Pinkerton of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, Kate Warren, who was one of the female detectives of that agency, Ernie Banks, Roger Ebert, Sarah E. Good, and Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. The cemetery is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and weekends, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Open House Chicago is all throughout the city. This is an annual celebration of architecture put on by the Chicago Architecture Center. This year, it will be October 15th and 16th. And essentially, it is there so that all of the buildings open their doors to the public. And you can go in and have tours or just explore buildings that may not normally be open to the public, including people's homes, the Fine Arts Building, the Harold Washington Library, Museum of Surgical Science, the Illinois Holocaust Museum, the McCormick Place Rooftop Farm, and also some churches, businesses, and even a castle. There are over 300 buildings that are included every year. It is impossible to visit all of them, so they do recommend that you take a look at the app ahead of time, see what buildings are included, and make a wish list. Work through a couple this year, do a couple next year, and kind of work through them over time. Or you can make a list of things that are close together and maybe take it a neighborhood at a time. They do offer free virtual lectures leading up to and during Open House Chicago. They do recommend that you download the app rather than look at their website because there's information included on the app that they don't have anywhere else. This is a great way to visit different kinds of locations, including museums, without paying the usual entrance fee. Also throughout the city is the Statue Stories walking tour. It is free. They are just statues around town, some of which you may have already seen. It is a series of 30 statues, and the City and Park District teamed up with Chicago Theaters and WBEZ to give a voice to some of these statues. If you go up to these, they used to have a little QR code, which are not available on most statues anymore. But if you go to their website, you can find a list of all the statues and listen to the recordings there. So if you walk up to an interesting statue, such as the Bob Hope one here, you find it on their list and click it, and the recording is as if that statue were giving you a phone call. These are voiced by famous actors, all with connections to Chicago. And some of the scripts were a result of writing contests, and others were written by well-known writers such as Shonda Rhimes, who has written pretty much everything on Thursday nights on ABC. There are self-guided tours that you can find by neighborhood listed on their website, or just while you're around the city looking at other things, take a look and see if that statue is included. There are all kinds of things, famous people, but there's also animals. The entire cast of The Wizard of Oz is included. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And even the Picasso structure has something to say. Other public art can be found in the Wabash Arts Corridor in the South Loop. It is free. It's open. It's out in the community. There are occasionally tours offered through the Chicago Architecture Center, but there are none available right now. They are completely sold out through September. There are occasionally other cheaper tours offered from time to time, but there's nothing on the calendar right now. But tours are often included as part of Open House Chicago. The Arts Corridor was founded by Columbia College Chicago in 2013, and the goal was to be Chicago's living urban canvas. If you take a look at the photograph here, you'll see on the side a light post, which is very tall, and that'll give you an idea of the scale of this piece of art, which is not even the largest one in the collection. So it's very interesting to walk through the neighborhood and see all the different art and how it interacts with the neighborhood around it. Another big piece of art is Art on the Mart in the downtown loop. It is free because there is not possibly a way that they could keep you from seeing it. It is essentially a film that is projected on the side of the Mercantile Mart and is done using 34 projectors along the Riverwalk. Right now, they just changed the times to their later times to work around the schedule of the sun, and now has shows at 9 and 9:30 p.m. It is considered the largest permanent digital art projection in the world and can best be viewed from the Chicago Riverwalk between Lake and Wells. Right now, they have a couple of films that are being shown, and all of these films are either combinations with local organizations and famous filmmakers, or it is part of a very competitive submission process. So right now, the 9 p.m. show is 2 videos, Billiken and Explore. Billiken is a mix of video footage and animation that celebrate dance groups and marching bands that participate in Chicago's annual Bud Billiken Parade, the largest and longest running African-American parade in the U.S., which started in 1920. Explore promises rhythmic choreography that will turn the building into a towering musical instrument. This is part of the Art on the Mart's Year of Dance. Following that up at 9:30 is Ba Boom Boom Pa Pop Pop by Nick Cave, which will be there through September 7th. And this features brightly colored figures that will dance across the surface of the building and transport the viewer to a kaleidoscopic other world. It's very interesting to watch. It is on a scale that you have not seen before, and this is one that you can stop and see after a long day in the city, visiting other things before you get on the metro or get in the car to drive home. The Chicago Greeter Tours are throughout the city. They are not available to city residents. They are only for out-of-towners. They are free and require 10-day notice. Essentially, there are over 200 volunteers who you can be paired up with that will give you a 2 to 4 hour walking tour for up to 6 people. These are all personalized to you based on your interests, and they include things like cultures, local history, art and architecture, cuisine, and they now have a gay Chicago topic you can choose. In addition, they have 25 different neighborhoods if you want to do a neighborhood tour. It combines walking, buses, and trains. So this is a great introduction to the CTA system if you're not yet comfortable with that, because you will have a guide with you at all times. There are also what they call Instagrater Walks, which are 1 hour and open to anyone. They are Friday through Sunday at 11:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. And those tours leave from the Chicago Cultural Center, Randolph Street lobby. The tours are also offered in over a dozen languages. We are very fortunate in Chicago to have not one, but 2 premier zoos, one of which is the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is, of course, in Lincoln Park. It is free and open 365 days a year. It was founded in 1868 and is the 4th oldest zoo in America. It was created with the donation of 2 swans, a puma, 2 elk, 3 wolves, 4 eagles, and 8 peacock, and now has 1,100 animals. If you've heard me speak about this before, you know that I am fascinated and maybe somewhat obsessed with the history of this zoo. I have done research and not been able to find out how those animals in particular became the start of the zoo. But in my mind, it was some eccentric millionaire had these animals just wandering around the grounds and decided to make a zoo out of them. I don't think that is the real story, but until I hear otherwise, that is what I choose to believe. There is a bur oak tree from 1930 in the zoo, which makes it 3 years older than the Chicago was actually a city. They have a beautiful nature boardwalk, a river, a natural prairie, and what I think is the best photograph spot of the Hancock building in the entire city. It makes for a really good photo op. You can stand on the bridge over the river with the prairie grass in the background and the Hancock building behind you. It is definitely worth stopping just for that picture. But the zoo has a lot of wonderful exhibits with all kinds of different animals, including the red panda pictured here, which is my favorite animal, so I'm a little biased, but fortunately both zoos in Chicago have red pandas for me. The zoo also has a very detailed accessibility page on their website, which also includes sensory levels and what to expect when visiting the zoo and what to expect in each building specifically. So if you are visiting with maybe someone on the spectrum or someone with a disability, either physical or mental, or just a very inquisitive child, you can go on here and tell them exactly what they can expect to really prepare them for their visit. There are also tactile exhibits throughout the zoo for visually impaired visitors. And at their events, you can request American Sign Language interpretations. No list of Chicago would be complete without Millennium Park, which is actually in Grant Park. I think I'm required to include it here. It is the #1 tourist attraction in the Midwest and what I believe is the most photographed item in the Midwest as well. It is free and open 365 days a year. A fun fact that you may not know is Millennium Park is considered the world's largest rooftop garden because it is atop the Millennium Station for the Metro. The bean here, as we know it, is also called the Cloud Gate. There is also the Crown Fountain, which is the faces that you see. And that one's particularly fun to stop by in the summer because there is an actual fountain. You can take off your shoes and walk through, and it is wonderful on a hot day. The Lurie Gardens are gorgeous. They actually swap out what is growing in the gardens constantly so that everything is always in bloom. Throughout the whole park is scattered some public art, which changes pretty often. So you may wander and stumble across something in your trip through there. There's also an ice skating rink from mid-November to mid-March, and you can rent skates there. What is particularly interesting this year is that we have a return of the free concerts in the Pritzker Pavilion, which is at the Millennium Park. And those have been away for a few years, so it's very fun to have them back. You can sit in the pavilion and listen, or you can enjoy the music while you walk through the gardens or see the public art. Right across the street is Maggie Daly Park, and this one is a little newer, may not be as familiar to folks. It is always free and is open 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day. The play garden does close at 9 p.m., but I think that's okay because the little ones are probably going to be in bed after that. What I think is particularly smart about this park is that all of the play areas are separated by age. If you've ever gone to a playground with a toddler, you know that moment where you get a little bit nervous when they go to play on the same equipment as the big kids. And you don't have to worry about that here because all of the play areas are really focused on meeting the developmental needs of those children as well as the size, and also just helps keep those different age groups apart so you don't have to worry quite as much. They have an ice skating ribbon in the winter. They have tennis courts and a field house. And for an additional fee, you can go on their climbing wall, mini golf, or even bungee jump. They have ice skates, rollerblades, and micro scooters available to rent throughout the year. I mentioned the Wizard of Oz a little earlier. Oz Park is located in Lincoln Park on the north side. It is free and open daily, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. This was opened in 1976 and was a key part of the Lincoln Park Urban Renewal Project, which started in the 1960s as a goal to improve the neighborhood and make it more welcoming. It is named after the Wizard of Oz, and a lot of people think it's named after that because of the statues throughout the park, but the statues were actually added in the 90s and early 2000s, so there's a good 20-year gap before those showed up. All of the Wizard of Oz statues are included in Statue Stories Chicago, including Toto. They offer regular fitness programs, some of which are virtual. I believe they're going to be in the park now. Some of the facilities are on Chicago public school property and are currently closed, so check before you go. But the main park is open to everyone. And this is just a fun park to walk through. They also have a baseball field, basketball and tennis courts, a gymnasium, a field house, and a playground. The Garfield Park Conservatory is in Garfield Park. Garfield Park opened in 1874 as Central Park and was renamed in 1881 after the assassination of President James Garfield, which happened only 4 months after he began his term. The goal of the park was to replicate the pleasure gardens seen in Paris, where folks could stroll and boat and essentially see and be seen. The conservatory here at the park was opened in 1908 and was described as a world of landscape art under glass. There were originally 3 different greenhouses spread out across the park, and those were replaced by this large conservatory. They have a number of indoor and outdoor greenhouses. They have free entry and parking, and donations are accepted. Reservations are still required, but can be made 30 days in advance. And they regularly offer programs for all ages, including outdoor concerts and festivals. Right now, they have some events dedicated to origami, yoga, and they have quite a few demos of bees and beekeeping. The 606 is also called the Bloomingdale Trail. It's in Logan Square. It is free and open 365 days a year. And the trail was created in order to meet Chicago's minimum requirements for open space. The city is really dedicated to green spaces, and we, I believe, benefit from all of that. That's why we're able to have so much greenery in the city. But in order to do this, the neighborhoods needed to make a couple changes. Logan Square was short 99 acres of open space and had nowhere to put them. What they did have was a lot of unused railroad tracks. So it teamed up with a couple of neighborhoods, and they turned the former train line into a park. So unlike the other parks I mentioned, which are large and you can walk through them and they're, big open spaces, this park is actually kind of a skinny trail that connects a number of neighborhoods. It is a biking and running trail as well as walking. It has a lot of rotating outdoor art exhibits and a ton of outdoor events, including stargazing and holiday-themed festivals. The trail itself is open 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily, and if you want to walk the full length, it is 2.7 miles. Another interesting way to get around town is the Pedway in the Loop. It is free and open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Pedway is a series of underground tunnels that connect 50 different buildings over 40 blocks in the Loop. It was created as a way to get a lot of pedestrian traffic off of the streets. Because of that, we now have less accidents and better traffic flow. But we also are able to get commuters out of Chicago's wonderful weather. So whether it is raining or extremely hot or extremely cold, they are able to commute easily to their buildings without having to be out in the elements the whole time. Underground in the tunnels, there are many stores, a bar, and even a barber shop. It also links up with several hotels. So if you're planning a staycation in the city, check to see if your hotel is included, and maybe you can get into the Pedway while you're staying there. The Pedway also includes part of the Smith Museum of Stained Glass Windows. The rest of that can be seen for free at Navy Pier, which I believe is the only thing you can do for free at Navy Pier. And just as a pro tip, if you are there during the week and during the day, use the Pedway to get from place to place when it is snowing or raining or just unbearably hot outside. It makes it for a more interesting way to get around, but will also just keep you out of those elements as it was intended for the commuters. Replay Lincoln Park is another one of my favorites. It's in Lincoln Park, of course. It is a bar, so the cost here is just the cost of food and drink. The main room is full of classic arcade games and pinball machines, which are always free. You don't need to bring your quarters with you. The most interesting part about Replay is it constantly changes themes in different pop-ups. And when I say they have different themes, I mean they redo the entire space to fit a theme. Here you can see a photo from their Marvel pop-up. I was able to go to their Parks and Recreation pop-up, and I'm a big fan of the show. And they recreated the world's smallest park and had food and drinks that were named after different things in the show. Now, they don't actually serve food in the bar, but they've teamed up with local restaurants to make food for their themed menus. They have a digital screen at the bar. You put in your order, and someone from one of those restaurants will bring it to you at the bar. Their current theme is Jurassic Bar, so it is all Jurassic Park themed, and it's worth keeping an eye on their Facebook page to see what they have coming up in the future. They regularly host trivia and other events in conjunction with those pop-up themes. And one event they've recently started offering that I'm very curious about is Wordle Live. Not quite sure how you can do that live. I'm interested in finding out. But it is every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and they play 10 rounds, and there are cash prizes for the winners. If that's not quite your scene, you want something a little bit classier, got the Green Mill Cocktail Lounge in Uptown. The cost here is the cost of drinks, although there is a small cover charge for some of the bands. They are open Sunday through Thursday, 4 p.m. to 1:11 a.m. Their frequently asked questions does have the first question listed, why 1:11 a.m.? To which they basically responded, why not? It's open Fridays 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. and Saturday 1 p.m. to 2 a.m. It is styled as things were at the lounge in the 1930s and 40s. The lounge was a common haunt of Al Capone and similar folks, so you'll be able to see where they spent their time. They are connected to a series of tunnels, but they will not let you go through the tunnels. It actually says, please do not ask, because they are not allowed to let you back there. They do have live music every night, 8 p.m. to midnight. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they feature dance music. So if you're looking to go out dancing, this might be an option for you. Unfortunately, the lounge does not offer food. They do have drinks only, and they are cash only. There's an ATM on site, but it helps to plan ahead. There are many things Chicago is known for, and Breweries is just one of them. So I had to include at least one here. The Fulton Street Brewery in Logan Square is part of the Goose Island Beer Company. It is their main brewery. It is going to reopen on July 2nd after a long period without tours during the pandemic. The brewery was built in 1995 and has more than doubled in size since it was originally built. They have 32 fermenters, 15 different yeasts, filters, centrifuges, and 50 barrels. Their packaging system puts out 500 cases of bottles an hour, and their keg line rate puts out 50 kegs every hour. So this is a huge operation, very fast, a lot going on here. It's one of the more interesting brewery tours in the city. The tour is $15, which includes the brewery, the fermentation cellar, the packaging line, the barrel aging program, and more. It also includes beer tastings along the way, as well as a free pint glass to take home with you. All of those separately, I think, would probably be more than $15. They do have tours offered on Saturday and Sunday at 1, 3, and 5 p.m. I do recommend getting advance tickets online because they sell out pretty quickly. The brewery does have some snacks available on their menu, but you can also bring your own food from outside of the brewery. Another thing Chicago is known for is our music, particularly blues. Blues Chicago is in River North. There is a $12 admission plus the cost of drinks. They're open Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, 8 p.m. to 1:30 a.m., and Saturday, 8 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. They have live blues music every night, and those bands begin playing around 9 p.m. This is another one that's cash only, but they do have an ATM on site, and unfortunately, this is yet another one that does not serve food. My favorites on this list happen to be the ones with food. Chicago has a very specific style of improv made popular by Second City and all of its alum that have gone on to Saturday Night Live and a lot of your favorite comedies. This one is the Neo-Futurist Theater in Ravenswood. They used to have a very unique system for getting tickets. Now they are sold online or at the door. They have shows at 10:30 p.m. on Friday and Saturday and 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. Right now, their featured show is Infinite Wrench, which promises to have 30 plays in 60 minutes. It is grown-ups only. On their website, they say, "We have no minimum age requirement, but will remind anyone bringing kids under the age of 14 that we might scar them for life by accident and without remorse." Some pro tips: it's not very accessible. They do have an elevator to get into the building. It's on the second floor, but unfortunately that hallway has some steps in it that they cannot get over. So call ahead to get accommodations if you need to. It's also a pretty small space, so seats are first come, first served. It helps to arrive early. And they do recommend that guests in the front row may be splashed with water, asked intrusive personal questions, or sat on by a cast member. So choose your seat wisely. Right now, they are still requiring that all visitors be fully vaccinated, which includes a booster shot. This is because the space is so small and very close quarters. The Maxwell Street Market is in the downtown loop. It is free. They have $5 all-day parking, which is probably the best deal you'll find anywhere in the city. They are open Sundays, April through December, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And this is a large open market that has been going since 1847, although it was not city official until 1912. It has a lot of handmade crafts, resale housewares, and clothing, and they offer a lot of outdoor events, including music and dance lessons. Check their Facebook before you go because they do close somewhat frequently due to weather. If you're looking for interesting finds, Woolly Mammoth is the place to go. Woolly Mammoth Antiques and Oddities is in Ravenswood. It's free entry. It is an actual store. It is open right now only 12 to 5 p.m. daily and is limited to 5 people in the store at a time, and face coverings are still required. Again, very small space. They describe themselves as a curiosity cabinet of odd, amusing, and eclectic items resurrected from the past. They also say that they specialize in vintage and antique taxidermy, anatomy items, medical stuffs, books, toys, skulls, bones, skeletons, military, funerary art, charts, maps, tools, specimens, natural history, science, culture, and industrial. If you have to list that many things, I don't think you're allowed to say you specialize in anything. What I would say they specialize in is the weird and unique. It's worth it just to walk through and maybe go with someone else and challenge each other to find the strangest thing in the store. I guarantee there's something you will not expect to find in there. Additionally, I have to promote the library's resources. Free with your library card, we have 2 services. The Museum Adventure Pass, which is free passes to major attractions, including the Brookfield Zoo, Cantini, Oaklawn Children's Museum, and the Kids Work Children's Museum. These are first come, first serve. They have a limited number available at a time, so think of it as if it were a book on the shelf. There are only so many, and you have to wait until it's returned. When you check one out with your card, you get a printout with the coupon. You can use it anytime in 7 days, and you don't need to return it. It just expires. Additionally, your library offers Explore More Illinois, which is a series of discounts available through your library card. Some of the interesting places included here are Love's Sweet Arrow, which is one of the nation's only romance-only bookstores, the Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, and the 1950s Park Forest House Museum. Talk to any of the library staff about how to get these passes and where to find them and use them in the future. There are always museum free days coming up. They are updated regularly on the Time Out Chicago website. The Adler Planetarium is free every Wednesday, 4 to 10 p.m. for Illinois residents. And there are actually a good number of free days coming up, which is unusual for summer. Generally, the museums choose not to offer things for free because that is peak tourist season. So coming up at the Museum of Science and Industry, we've got quite a few days in September. So if you're looking to go, September's the month to go in. The Field Museum has a couple of free days on August 23rd, 24th, 30th, and 31st. The Chicago History Museum is open for free on July 4th, August 23rd through 26th, and 30th through 31st. I plan to be there on July 4th. The Chicago History Museum is my favorite museum in the entire city. Unfortunately, the cost is just a little bit higher than I wanted to include it on this list. But if you've never been, I highly recommend it. It is a fascinating place full of Chicago history, from sports to major events like the Chicago Fire. And you can even sit in one of the original trolley cars from the Chicago World's Fair Columbian Exposition. So I plan on being there July 4th because I'm hoping most people will assume the museum is closed that day and it won't be quite so crowded. But I'll clue you in on that secret and you can come hang out with me. The Art Museum is always free for Chicago teens under the age of 18, all children under 14, and Link and WIC card holders, as well as active military duty and Illinois educators K through 12. Museum of Science and Industry is always free for United States military active duty personnel and veterans, Illinois POWs, Chicago firefighters, Chicago police officers, and Illinois teachers pre-K through 12. And the Field Museum is always free for Illinois teachers, pre-K through 12, and active military personnel, and they can receive a free basic admission year-round. So those are worth checking out. As I mentioned, go to the Time Out Chicago website to see when those are happening. It does update fairly regularly. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at my website, jezlehman.com. If you go to jezlehman.com/30things, you can find a downloadable, printable flyer that lists all of these exhibits and locations, and you can use them to plan your next trip into the city. So thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you enjoy your activities and adventures, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.